The power grid collapses. Not from a cyber-ratic, not from a solar flare, but from cascading failures that spiral beyond repair. Within 12 hours, every major city in North America goes dark. The hum of refrigerators dies. Traffic lights blink out. Cell towers drain their backup batteries and fall silent. This is not a temporary blackout. This is month 1 of total grid failure. And if you think you will survive this by lighting candles and waiting for help, you are already among the dead. Most people have about 3 days of food in their homes, maybe a week if they stretch it. But here is what actually happens in the first 72 hours. Panic buying strips every grocery store bare. Not because people are thinking strategically, but because fear is contagious. By day 4, the food is gone. The water pressure drops as pumping stations fail. Sewage backs up into streets, and the thin layer of civilization that holds society together begins to peel away, like skin from a burn victim. But the real crisis is not hunger. Not yet. The real crisis is information collapse. Without power, you lose the internet. Jew Lowe's radio. You lose any centralized way to know what is happening beyond your immediate block. Rumors replace facts. Someone says the government is setting up aid stations downtown. Someone else says martial law has been declared. Neither is true, but thousands of people flood the streets based on whispers. This is when the first deaths happen. Not from starvation, but from chaos. Stampedes, riots, people crushed, trying to get into locked government buildings that were never going to open. Here is the brutal physics of a grid-down scenario. Modern cities are machines that require constant energy input to function. They are not designed to fail gracefully. When electricity stops, water treatment plants stop. When water stops, sanitation stops. When sanitation stops, disease vectors explode. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, the Victorian-era killers that antibiotics and clean water buried come roaring back. And you cannot boil contaminated water if you have no fuel. You cannot store clean water if you have no containers. Every single system that keeps you alive is linked to electricity, and when that chain breaks, the entire structure collapses. By week 2, the grocery stores are not just empty, they are looted, windows smashed, shelves overturned. The same goes for pharmacies. Anyone on insulin is already in crisis. Anyone with a chronic condition is rationing pills. Hospitals are overwhelmed, running on generators that will die when the diesel runs out, which happens faster than anyone planned because fuel trucks stopped rolling when the payment systems went down. Let us talk about water, because this is where most people die. You think you can survive without food for 3 weeks. That is technically true. But you will die without water in 3 days. And tap water stops flowing almost immediately when the grid fails. Pumping stations lose power. Water pressure drops. What little water remains in the pipes becomes contaminated as sewage backs up. So your first objective is not food, it is water. And your options are limited, brutal, and require knowledge most people do not have. The obvious sources: rivers, lakes, streams are immediately swarmed. Thousands of people with the same idea, dipping bottles into water that is already polluted from upstream industrial runoff, agricultural waste, and human sewage. Drinking that water without treatment is a death sentence, but most people do it anyway because they have no choice. They get sick within days. Diarrhea, vomiting, dehydration. And once you are dehydrated, you drink more contaminated water, which makes it worse. It is a spiral that kills you in less than a week. Here is the unconventional move: urban water sources no one thinks about. Water heaters. Every home has one, holding 40 to 60 gallons of semi-clean water. If you drain it from the valve at the bottom before anyone else thinks of it, you buy yourself a week. Swimming pools. Even backyard pools in suburban neighborhoods hold thousands of gallons. It is chlorinated, which means it is safer than river water, though you still need to filter it. Toilet tanks, not the bowl. The tank hold clean water. Office buildings have massive rooftop water tanks for fire suppression systems. Most people never think to access them. You do, but accessing water is only half the problem. You need to purify it. Boiling works, but only if you have fuel. Most people run out of propane or charcoal in the first week, so you need a chemical method. Bleach. Plain, unscented, chlorine bleach. 8 drops per gallon of clear water. 16 if it is cloudy. Wait 30 minutes. It tastes like a swimming pool, but it will not kill you. The problem is that bleach degrades over time, especially in heat. So if you stored a bottle in your garage 3 years ago, it might be useless now. You need fresh bleach, which means raiding stores in the first few days before everyone else realizes this. There is another method almost no one knows. Calcium hydrochloride. It is pool shock, the powder form of chlorine. 1 pound can purify 10,000 gallons of water. You mix a tiny amount with water to create a chlorine solution, then use that to treat drinking water. It stores for years without degrading. But here is the trick. You have to know the right ratios. Too much and you poison yourself. Too little and you are drinking bacteria. The formula is 1 teaspoon of pool shock per 2 gallons of water to create your chlorine solution, then 1 part solution to 100 parts drinking water. Get it wrong and you are dead. Now let us address food. By week 3, hunger is not just discomfort, it is cognitive decline. Your brain runs on glucose. When you stop eating, your body burns through glycogen stores in about 24 hours, then starts breaking down fat and muscle. You get weak, you get stupid, you make mistakes, and in a collapsed society, mistakes are fatal. The common advice is to stockpile canned goods. Fine, but cans are heavy, bulky, and finite. You eat through them faster than you think. A family of 4 needs about 8,000 calories a day to maintain basic function. That is roughly 16 cans of soup per day. In a month, you need 480 cans. Most people do not have that. Most people have maybe 30 cans in their pantry, which gives them less than a week. Here is the uncommon advice. Caloric density. You need fats. Fats have 9 calories per gram compared to 4 for carbs or protein. Peanut butter, olive oil, nuts. These are survival foods because they pack maximum energy into minimum volume. A single jar of peanut butter has about 2,500 calories. A bottle of olive oil has about 4,000. You can survive for days on spoonfuls of oil. It is disgusting, but it works. Then there is urban foraging, which sounds romantic until you realize that every park, every tree, every patch of edible plants is stripped within days. Dandelions, acorns, cattails, all the survival blog staples are gone because 10,000 other people read the same blogs. So you need to think deeper. Construction sites. Urban areas under development often have disturbed soil where wild edibles grow that most people overlook. Pigeons. Yes, pigeons. They are everywhere. They are easy to trap, and they are pure protein. You make a simple box trap with a stick and string, bait it with breadcrumbs. You can catch a dozen a day. Cook them thoroughly to avoid disease, but they will keep you alive. Rats. This is where it gets dark, but you need to hear it. Rats are edible. They are disease vectors, yes, but if you cook them to an internal temperature of 165 degrees, you kill the pathogens. They are small, but a single rat has about 200 calories. In a city, there are millions of them. You trap them the same way you trap pigeons. You skin them, gut them, roast them over a fire. This is not theoretical. This is what people do when they are starving. And if you wait until you are starving to learn how, you are too late. Then there is the psychological collapse. This is the part no one talks about. The human mind is not built for prolonged crisis. We are wired for acute stress, fight or flight, a few minutes of adrenaline, then resolution. But a grid-down scenario is chronic stress. Day after day of uncertainty, danger, hunger, fear, and the mind starts to break. Week 1. People are cooperative. There is a sense of shared emergency. Neighbors help each other. Week 2. That starts to crack. Resources are running low. Trust erodes. Week 3. It is every man for himself. Week 4. You see violence. Not random violence, but calculated. People form groups. They raid homes. They take what they need. And if you are alone, you are a target. Here is the edge. You need a network before the collapse, not after. After is too late. You need people you trust, people with skills, a medic, a mechanic, someone who knows chemistry, someone who can fight. You form a group, you pool resources, you establish a defensible location. This is not about being antisocial. This is about survival math. A lone individual cannot stay awake 24 hours a day, cannot defend a position, cannot gather food and water and maintain security simultaneously. You need a team. But here is the trap. Most people pick the wrong people. They pick friends, family, people they like. Wrong, you pick people based on capability. The guy who can fix a diesel generator is worth 10 of your college buddies. The nurse who can stitch a wound without anesthesia is worth more than your entire social circle. Skills over relationships, always. Now let us talk about security, because this is where most preppers get it catastrophically wrong. They think guns solve everything. Guns do not solve everything. Guns make noise. Noise attracts attention. Attention gets you killed. You need quiet solutions, knives, bats, improvised weapons, but more than that, you need deterrence. You need to look like a harder target than the house next door. Boarded windows, visible defenses. The appearance of organization. Raiders are opportunistic. They hit soft targets. Make yourself hard. But here is the deeper strategy. You do not stay in the city. Cities are death traps in a grid-down scenario. Too many people, too few resources. The density that makes cities efficient in normal times makes them lethal in collapse. You need to leave, but not immediately. Immediate evacuation is when the roads are clogged, when everyone is panicking, when you get stuck in traffic and become a target. You wait 72 hours. Let the first wave of panic clear. Then you move. Where do you go? Not the wilderness. The wilderness is a fantasy. You are not a mountain man. You do not have the skills to live off the land. You will starve or freeze or get injured and die alone. You go to rural areas, small towns, places with agriculture, with wells, with resources that are not dependent on the grid. You bring skills, you trade labor for food. You integrate. This is not about being a lone wolf. This is about finding a community that can survive and making yourself useful to them. But even that requires preparation. You need a vehicle, you need fuel, you need maps, because GPS is dead. You need a route planned in advance. You need to know where you are going and how to get there without highways, because highways will be blocked. Back roads, service roads, routes that bypass cities. You scout these in advance. You do not figure them out when you are running for your life. Let us talk about medicine, because this is the silent killer. A cut becomes infected. An infected cut becomes sepsis. Sepsis kills you in days. Antibiotics are the difference between life and death, but antibiotics require a prescription, so you stockpile them in advance. Fish, antibiotics. They are the same as human antibiotics, Cilindoxy, Silinon, doxycycline, but sold over the counter for aquarium use. You research dosages. You store them properly, and when someone in your group gets an infected wound, you treat it aggressively. Dental care. No one thinks about this. A toothache becomes an abscess. An abscess becomes a systemic infection. You die from a bad tooth, so you stockpile oil of cloves for pain. You learn basic extraction techniques. You bring dental floss, not for your teeth, but for sutures. It is sterile, it is strong, and it works. Then there is the reality of waste. Sewage systems fail. Toilets stop flushing. You need a plan for human waste or you get disease. You dig latrines, deep covered. Away from water sources, you use lime to control smell and bacteria. This is not glamorous. This is life or death hygiene. By month 1, the people who survive are not the ones with the most guns or the biggest stockpile. They are the ones who understood the science, who thought 3 steps ahead, who prepared psychologically, who built networks, who moved at the right time, who made hard choices without hesitation. The rest are already gone, dead from contaminated water, dead from infected wounds, dead from starvation, dead from violence, dead because they believed someone would save them. No one is coming. The government cannot restore the grid in a month. They cannot feed 300 million people. They cannot maintain order when their own systems have collapsed. You survive because you accepted the truth early. You survive because you acted on knowledge, not hope. You survive because you became the kind of person who does what is necessary, no matter how ugly, no matter how hard. This is not a drill. This is not a movie. This is the reality of cascading infrastructure failure. And the only difference between the ones who make it and the ones who do not is preparation. Not luck, not government aid. Preparation, the knowledge in your head, the skills in your hands, the will to do what others cannot. Month 1 is just the beginning. The grid does not come back. The trucks do not start rolling again. Society does not rebuild itself. What comes next is darker, harder, more brutal. But if you make it through month 1, you have a chance. A small one, but a chance. The clock is ticking. The grid is fragile, and when it falls, you will have no time to learn. You either know, or you die. Choose now.